firm's been in business now for 27 years, and we're one office. We're here in Dallas. There's 70 of us. So the firm has always had a real devotion to this place. I was born and raised here, and as was my wife. So we had this passion for wanting to be deeply involved with work here, see it, touch it, have our friends see it, the relationships, the political connections. That's what the firm's all about. We like to think we know everybody and everybody knows us, and there's plenty of work here in Dallas-Fort Worth for us to do. So that's the nature of the firm. Three kinds of work. We work for real estate developers, doing all the things that real estate developers do. We work for corporate clients, retailers like Crate and Barrel, Container Store, etc. Nokia, Siemens, fine corporations, Crow Holdings. And then we work for institutional clients. And those are always private institutions. They're private schools, college and university, nonprofits, that sort of thing. Don't work for the federal government. Stimulus packages of very little interest to us. The firm's done a nice amount of historic preservation work, adaptive reuse, where it's not pure preservation like this job. You're not treating it as a completely historic museum, but really a living, breathing thing where you're changing the use inside and you're making appropriate changes to make it function in the 21st century. We like that sort of thing. It's good work. So yeah, we were prepared for this sort of assignment. And we've been looking at Old Parkland for various clients and for the county, previous owner, since about 2000. So we had a good background on this structure before Harlan and Barry called and said, let's talk about it. We had worked for Harlan as early as 1985 or 86. We were tenants of Trammell Crow Company at that time in Trammell Crow Center, 1985 to 1990. So we had a relationship with Harlan that went way back. So both relationships were existing before we were called to come talk about the assignment. You know, we really knew this was sort of the commission of a lifetime, that there were just fabulous opportunities here. The idea that a building that the whole community wanted to see restored, saved, restored, reused. So we were very excited about that. The challenge that we saw was that the building is an old, what's called a pavilion hospital. In historic preservation terms, and this was common around the turn of the century, hospitals were composed of sort of individual linked pavilions, the characteristic of this building as you see it. And the reason why that was done was because you needed to get air. For a hospital to be healthy, you had to have windows on both sides, letting the breezes go through and keep the air healthy. Well, as a result, this building is made up of little bitty skinny wings. You take a modern corporation like Crow Holdings and you say, how can you imagine them existing chopped up in little parts and pieces? So from the very beginning, we knew the challenge was to preserve the best parts of this building, the most historic, the most interesting, the most detailed architecture, and find a place to create a workplace that matched Crow Holdings' corporate culture. And their corporate culture is communicative. It's a flat, non-hierarchical structure. Harlan sits in an open office, and the employee that comes in fresh out of college sits in an open office. And so we knew we'd have to create a big space where everybody sits together. And they've been known to throw the frisbee or toss a football, and it's a wide open corporate culture. So that was the nifty challenge, and we really knew it from the beginning. I had a very clear vision of what should happen, and that is that we should honestly preserve the old parts that we were keeping and make it crystal clear to everyone, there's the original building. And then what we added should have a marvelous contrast to that. Not a little bit of contrast, but a lot of contrast. And some of the most interesting debates with our client came about that topic. There's some technical issues that are involved in that the document that governs the restoration and addition to landmarks is the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. And these were written years ago, and they get subtly updated from time to time. And they say that when you add on to a landmark structure, make it clear to the people who look at the building, that was old, that is new. And so we do have that rule that we needed to apply. But you can do that subtly or you can do it boldly. So in our conversations with Harlan, we presented the glass and steel infill that infills between the wings, the big room. And it says 2009, it says I'm today's technology, I'm modern, I'm a modern company. And there were some side points there too that are interesting, and that is what was the exterior, the rear of the old building was modest. Back in those days, they spent the money for the terracotta and the cast stone and all the detail on the front of the building, and they went fairly functional and utilitarian in the rear. So we originally thought, well, let's just expose that. Let's tell the story. When you step into the big room and you look back at what used to be the outside of the old building, let's just see the common brick and the nature of the building as it was. And Harlan said, no, I think I want to dress that up. So some of the things that you see now, the new stone detailing on the back wall in the big room, new wood trim, those beautiful bronze railings. That's the partnership with a client. That's a client saying, this is really what I want to do. So it's fun. That's the way the best buildings happen, is when a strong-willed architect, interior designer meet up with a strong-willed client, and they enjoy discussing and debating, and hopefully something really good comes out of it. What was most stimulating was the commitment to quality. The fact that what the company wanted to do was not always governed by short-term economic issues. I think the fact that Crow Holdings said this is a wise place to create a home for our company, and because it's a home for our company, we're going to do it. We're going to do some things that maybe you wouldn't do if you were creating a speculative office building for lease to others. And that came through early. For instance, Harlan painted a picture of this campus as similar to an Ivy League college campus. The scale of the buildings, they wouldn't be big office buildings, they'd be scaled like a university academic building, 3 and 4 stories high, set in a garden environment, and the parking would all be banished underground. And of course, the first thing that went through my mind was, let's see, putting the parking below grade and doing small 4-plate buildings is a very expensive decision. And we'd say to ourselves, they're going to have to rent these for $55 a square foot to make it work. And Harlan said, well, Larry, we're going to surround ourselves with like-minded companies, with interesting people that we enjoy being around, who like this sort of environment, and who say, if I pay $30 a foot or $40 a foot, I don't mind paying a little more because it's worth it to have the environment I want. So we were getting so excited about the idea that we'd create that sort of campus feel. It's a rare thing when an old building of character is sitting on enough land that one can do the expansion and adaptive reuse of that building and then add other structures to really create a campus. Before the building was finished, the project was awarded a sustainability award. The AIA chapter here in Dallas has a design awards program annually. And they started a new award called the Sustainability Award to really award a project that they could hold up as an example of building green or building thoughtfully in this growing movement of sustainable development. And they selected Old Parkland and said, first of all, the greenest building is one that was already here. So here's somebody who's been a good steward of an existing building, and the design work that was done was admirable. So that was a wonderful award to Crow Holdings and Good Fulton and Farrell. A county hospital was a functional place. It wasn't a luxurious place. So you stepped in a lobby that didn't particularly have high ceilings. There wasn't a sense of arrival that was befitting what the company should have. So Harlan suggested, well, gee, maybe what we need to do is remove some of the second floor area. You step in and you look up. Let's create a 2-story high space, and that'll feel better. That's the right scale for a building of this size. And certainly nothing like that existed in the building. So here's a case where we're not doing an accurate historic restoration. We're adapting the building. When it came down to it, they removed a segment of the floor, and the column that went from the first floor to the second floor and the column that went from the second floor up to the roof were offset from each other. So when we tore the floor out, you've got this column that goes up and goes over and goes up, and we all scratched our heads and said, now what are we going to do? So the column's going to have to get bigger. We had to wrap it with a wrapper that was big enough to cover the column over here and the column over here. So things like that were the challenges. Again, nobody wanted to create a parking structure that everybody could see, and we certainly didn't want surface parking. So the idea was to excavate one floor lower than the basement level of this building. But when you go to dig out still another 10, 11, 12 feet down, you start to mess with the foundation that underpins the building. So as they very carefully would dig out, they'd have to work very diligently to shore up and underpin the foundation for the building. And that was something that would make anybody nervous. It makes the architect, the structural engineer, the contractor, and the owner all a little nervous. Is this going well? And it did. The contractor did a great job. The creation of the new Oak Lawn exit from the tollway had the effect of putting this site on the map in a different way. This site used to be on the corner of Maple and Oak Lawn. Now it's on the corner of Oak Lawn and the tollway. Because Oak Lawn used to slip anonymously under Dallas North Tollway, and it had no, you couldn't get off there, no way to access it. And it makes a huge difference, especially for a number of people commuting from Preston Hollow and the Park Cities. They slide right down the tollway, get off at Oak Lawn, and they're right here. And that's really the target market for the folks who would be officing here, and a number of the employees at Crow Holdings live in those neighborhoods. So I'm sure that had a major influence on the company's decision to invest in this property and put their home here. I mean, yeah, it's in, as we were discussing earlier, it has the visibility of the Crow family realm from years and years, but still that access quality that you mentioned is a great benefit. And anybody in the real estate business would say that that's big. From the very beginning, we knew that the campus would be defined. It would be secure. It would be able to be gated during off hours, and although the gates may be open, there'd be a sense of security during regular office hours as well. We went to the Landmark Commission. The Landmark Commission of the City of Dallas did not want a wall or a fence around this property. They did not want that. There was not one here historically, and they're purists. So they say, if there wasn't one here originally, we're not going to let you put one. Well, we pushed back a little bit, and we said this is very important, and because we're restoring this fine landmark and it needs to be a secure corporate campus, we really need to have a wall or a fence of some sort. Okay, well, it can't be any higher than 6 feet, and it can't have much detail in it, because if there's a lot of detail in it, it will detract from people's view of this beautiful building. And we want the pickets to be spaced no closer than 6 inches. That way it doesn't get too dense and again sort of interrupt your view. Well, what we did was we did that famous thing. We were going to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. So the columns for the fence aren't 6 feet high, they approach 8 feet high in the front. The pickets are spaced much closer than 6 inches apart, and there's lots of detail in that fence. Well, so far, everybody on the Landmark Commission and the city preservation folks have seen it, and not one of them has said, shame on you, you have violated our rules. And so I think we're going to get away with it. I don't think anybody's going to tell Harlan he's got to tear his fence down. When I would attend open houses and receptions that the company would have early on, the project was nearing completion, and some of the first folks they had in were some of the doctors and nurses and folks who were associated with Parkland through the years. And it was so much fun to see the looks on their faces and to hear them as they launch into stories about the building and about their time on campus, and some of the things they used to do, like climbing up the coins at the corner of the building to get in and out of the nurses' dormitory, or nude sunbathing on the roof of the nurses' dorm. I sort of liked that one. I didn't think they were that racy. But that was such a nice gesture of Harlan to engage those people. He just loves history. And I mean, that's evident in so many ways about the building, but they actually, in my mind, mined the knowledge that these folks had in order to know as much as possible about the campus and about the building, and then to create their museum of Old Parkland with old photographs and that sort of thing. I think it's wise, and it fits in with Harlan's passion for history in general.